Great day, everyone. I hope your day is going well. Welcome back. Today is day 3 of our series on burnout proof leadership. And I want to say, welcome in, welcome in, welcome in. If you are tuning in live or if you are catching the replay of this, do me a favor and tag a fellow leader who needs to hear this message. Today, we're going to be talking about the 3 pillars that prevent burnout before it starts. Right. So, um, tag that fellow leader who needs to hear this. That person who is feeling all the feels. They're overwhelmed. They're stressed. They don't know if they're coming or going. Um, you know, it's just the overwhelm, right? We're stuck in that hustle mode. And if that's you, then stick around, right? Consider yourselves sat in the moment, right? So anyway, like I said, we're talking about burnout proof leadership. But before we jump into today's session, right, today's topic, I want to do a quick recap of where we've been in this burnout proof leadership series, right? So in day 1 or part 1 of the series, we talked about the hidden cost of burnout. We uncovered how burnout isn't just a personal issue, but it is a performance and retention issue. We explored the kind of unseen ways that stress can drain productivity, morale, and engagement with your team. And we started to make the shift in our mindset from pushing harder to leading smarter, right? And then yesterday, in part 2, we talked about the leadership shift. So we went deeper into making that shift from pushing or grinding, hustling to being really smart with our leadership. So we made this pivot that every leader in today's stage really must make, right? That's moving from being reactionary, right, to that making that shift from being reactionary in our problem solving to being proactive, right? That looks like being like optimizing our team, right? And we explored how intentional leadership really allows you to create a culture that's going to prevent the burnout before it starts. Now that brings us into today, where we're getting real practical. We've talked a lot of like mindset and statistics and theory and all that. Now we're going to get down to the nitty gritty. And I'm going to be walking you through the 3 core pillars of burnout proof leadership, which are communication, collaboration, and capacity, right? So you can start to reinforce the structure of your team um, so that they can perform and stay well while they're doing it, right? Because yes, we need to be productive. We need to be able to meet our goals and our outcomes, but there is a way to do it without sacrificing our well-being in the process, right? So I want you to think about what we're talking about today as your leadership infrastructure, right? It is the what I call the 3C framework. These are the non-negotiables. These are the non-negotiables for creating a sustainable and high functioning or high performing team. Burnout starts to enter in when one or more of these pillars is either weak or just missing altogether, right? And that's not what we want. So let's dig into the first pillar, which is communication. We all know that when there are breakdowns in communication, that leads to all kinds of issues. And so it's important that we focus on creating clarity and consistency in our communication. By doing that, that's going to help to reduce confusion and emotional exhaustion. I mean, think about this. If there's miscommunication on a particular project, two people could end up doing the same work while another element of that project doesn't get done at all. And that's going to create frustration by the team members because now they double work has been done. Not only that, someone, something that's crucial to the project has gone undone, and that could impact your ability to move forward. It could push out deadlines. It can create so many different challenges when that happens. So having poor communication is going to lead to resentment, frustration, and it can also lead to employees becoming disengaged because they're like, leadership doesn't know what's happening around here. And if they don't know what's happening, then I sure as heck don't know what's happening. And that can cause people to just pull back. And that's not what we want. So here are some communication rituals, some very simple things that you can do that will help to strengthen that communication within your team, right? So that you provide that clarity. And by doing these as rituals, right, that creates the consistency that is needed in order to turn things around, right? So the first one is to have weekly check-ins. And I think I talked a little bit about this yesterday. So if you are having weekly team meetings, you want to have time set aside in that meeting to do some check-ins around whatever that main project is. Not only that, you want to have shared language around workload. What do I mean by that? Or capacity, right? That means that when you are talking about how much is on your plate, the time that you have available, the time and mental strength that you have available to be able to handle the work that's on your plate, you all need to have shared language around that, meaning that you need to identify kind of a framework or a rating system that helps everyone to be on the same page as it relates to the capacity that they have or to whatever workload is on their plate. That's going to make it so much easier for you all to communicate with one another where someone, and also identify when someone may be overloaded and someone else has greater capacity so that you can redistribute work and tasks in order to be able to be more productive and move things forward in the way that you desire to. Here's an example. You can really turn things around in your team simply by improving your internal communication loops, right? So if you are, one team, I'm trying to think of an example. One team put together a communication plan so that everyone knew what mode of communication to use for various types of communication and who communication needed to go to and when to communicate, right? And by creating that system and that structure, that really helped everyone to be on the same page, and that got things turned around so that they were working more like a well-oiled machine, right? So maybe coming up with a communication plan for your team, if there's not one company-wide, can be helpful to improve your communication. Now, the second pillar is collaboration, right? This is working together. And when it comes to building a burnout-proof team, this collaboration is key. This is where team members share the workload. And not only that, they trust one another to come through, to deliver the work product in the end. We're not around here wondering if Jane is going to get her assignment done. They trust that once I pass this off or hand this off to my teammate, they are going to follow through and complete the task. And if they're struggling or having a situation where they are kind of hung up because there's information that they're missing, or maybe they just kind of ran into a problem and they need some assistance solving what or resolving whatever that issue is, we know that they're going to come back and bring that to the team, or come together and mastermind with colleagues to say, hey, here's the challenge, here's the issue, what are some ways that we can overcome this, right? And everyone's going to work together to overcome that thing. That essentially creates a place of shared ownership. Everyone has ownership over the final product. And this is when you create shared ownership within your team, that's going to help to reduce that hero syndrome that tends to show up in nonprofit organizations, right? Like, I'm swooping in to save the day. There's only one team member that can get this done. And we need Ron to come in and save the day because he's the only one that can get that done. He's the only one that knows how to do that. No, everyone has ownership over the project or the program or the tasks at hand, the things that are going to move the mission of your team and organization forward, right? There's shared ownership there. So how do you might be like, Trisha, well, how do I foster collaboration within my team? Because, they just don't seem to be able to work well together. And I always have to step in because it just gets out of control. Well, that's a really great question. One, when you are working on fostering a collaborative team, you don't want to do that by micromanaging. That's going to work against you. Not only that, but you want to be present enough and support enough where you don't lose control over the movement and the activity that they're working of the things that they're working on, right? So that may look like providing creating some tools or providing some tools for people to be able to easily collaborate. Many work environments now use some sort of instant messaging system to be able to communicate quickly. Email is not fast. Our inboxes are overloaded by a deluge of emails on a day-to-day basis. That's not a really great place to collaborate. However, if you use let's say the Microsoft Office suite that includes Teams, you can instant message people, right? You can ping them and say, hey, can you hop on our quick Teams meeting so we can discuss this? You can also, when you're in those meeting rooms, there's ways that you can use like black whiteboards and things like that to make collaboration easy. You can share files within Teams. I don't think most organizations use Teams to the capacity that you really can. There are tons of collaborative features within there. There's also project management tools and apps that you can add on to your teams that will help you to be more collaborative in your work. Have regular meetings and stick to them, right? If you say you're going to have a monthly staff meeting or a weekly team meeting, whatever the meetings are that you need to have them set and stick to them. Even if you're the manager or you're the director and you have something come up and you're not able to meet, you should be able to designate someone on your team to still ensure that meeting takes place. And then that information gets reported back to you. Just because you aren't able to participate doesn't mean that the meeting shouldn't go forth, right? We talked in pillar 1 with that communication about consistency, right? So we need to have that consistency there. You can also create systems that help to promote healthy collaboration, right? Having some structure around that. Maybe even having using a tool like SharePoint or Dropbox, somewhere, some sort of systems, whether they are digital or it can be, policies and procedures, those are systems as well that help you to be able to collaborate and ensure that everyone is on the same page. Right. So I want to give you a quick exercise, if you will, just a mini exercise, right? So I want you to reflect. Think about that. I'm going to ask you this question. I want you to reflect on it for just a moment. Where am I fostering competition over collaboration in my team? Pause for effect, right? Sometimes as leaders, we are inadvertently creating an atmosphere of competition rather than collaboration. We're celebrating the efforts and accomplishments of one team member rather than celebrating the accomplishments of the team, right? I prefer to have team members compliment one another or celebrate one another rather than me do it, unless it's something that is really major. Because when the team members give kudos to one another, it's that more collaborative feel rather than it being when it comes from the manager or the leader or the director, then that can kind of create competition. Well, I did this, so recognize me too, right? That's not what we want, right? So how can you figure out where might I be fostering competition rather than collaboration in my team? And once you've identified where that might be, you got to take some steps to turn things around. And the third pillar in our 3C framework is capacity. Now, capacity is one of the greatest things that can build burnout. It's essentially like the silent burnout builder. What happens is you can end up having uneven or unclear workloads among your team members, and that can end up burning people out. Here's one sign that there may be imbalance in your team. You have that one go-to person who carries the load, right? You go to that person all the time. Listen, that was me. And I can speak from experience. I was the go-to person, and I prided myself on being the go-to person, but I was also stressed to the max. I was overwhelmed. I had very little life outside of work. My relationships were suffering. I didn't have a whole lot of joy. And eventually I got to the place where it was just too much and I left. That's not what you want. And what we tend to do, listen, I'm guilty too, but what we tend to do as leaders is we have that one employee or one or two employees who just are very easy to work with. They're ambitious. They're autonomous. They don't need a whole lot of hand holding and direction. And so it's easy for us to rely on them for things and put way more on them than we would other team members. We want to make sure that when we are distributing work to our team, that we do that in a very equitable way, not in an equal way. I'm going to say that again. Hopefully I can get it out. We want to distribute work in a way that is equitable, not equal. We need to know what the capacity is of the individual we are distributing work to, that we're, the person we're assigning work to, we need to know what their capacity is. We need to know what their skill set is. And not only that, we need to ensure that they are clear on what needs to be done. So if you are falling into the camp where you lean on one or two people and kind of dump a lot of work on them, I want you to think about reassigning some of those tasks. And not only that, building the capacity of your team strategically. So one of the ways that you can do this is during your weekly team meetings, you can have kind of a round robin check-in of, once you, because we've created the language, right? We've created language around our capacity. And so now we can say, all right, well, my capacity level is at 8 or 9. And someone else is maybe at 5 right now because they just finished a project. Okay, well, what can we, look at what can we take off of employee 8 plate and perhaps reassign to employee who's at a 5 to create a more equitable distribution of the work. Now, if you have someone who maybe is underperforming, or you believe that they are not performing to their potential, their full potential, how about that? You can start the process of building capacity within them strategically by delegating work to them, spending some time training and developing them so that they can build their capacity, helping to create systems and processes to make them help them be more efficient with their time. Perhaps you can shadow them to see how they're doing the work and identify some places where maybe they are spending too much time and maybe there's some bottlenecks there, and you can remove those bottlenecks to free up more time. There's so many different ways that you can go through the process of building that capacity in a very strategic way. Right. And I do have a delegation worksheet that helps you to think strategically about what it is that you need to delegate, who would be ideal to delegate to, and how to communicate whatever the task is that you're delegating to that individual. So if you're interested in grabbing that worksheet, it's totally free. Just drop worksheet in the comments and I will send that over to you. Or you can shoot me a DM and I'll be happy to drop that back to you, right? So let's kind of put all of this together, right? Each one of these pillars, right? The communication, collaboration, and capacity all support one another. When one of these areas is not there or is weak, then it's difficult for your team to perform at an optimal level. They play into each other, right? So if you have, if your workloads are equitably distributed and people are collaborating well, but there's not clear and consistent communication, then they're going to be confused. And that can, lead to frustration, right? So what does it matter if they're able to collaborate well and they've got the capacity, but no one, everyone's stepping over each other? That's not going to be helpful, right? So leaders who are really strong intentionally reinforce each one of these structures. And so I want to encourage you to take some time to review and assess each one of these pillars and identify which one maybe needs the most attention in your organization or in your team right now. And think about it. Let me know, which pillar do you think that you need to reinforce first? Drop it in the chat or in the comments. I'm curious to know. Now, If you aren't following me, I definitely encourage you to do so, because tomorrow we will be back with part 4, talking about how well-being can be a competitive advantage. So I also, before I close, want to make this offer. If you're ready to go deeper with your team, if you need some support around creating a burnout proof team and being a burnout proof leader, I offer strategy sessions and workshops. You can DM me to get my calendar link, or you just simply go to chatwithtresetta.com and book a call so that we can uh, discuss what's going on with your team and how I may be able to partner with you to build a more collaborative, communicative, and capacity filled team. So that's all for today. I will see you again tomorrow. Have an amazing rest of your day.